Hey guys, Tosan here. Sorry for the delay on the part 2 of this guide. I know some of you have been waiting for it for almost a month now, so sorry about that. But let's get into it. This is going to be showing gameplay and just general stuff that you want to do. I'm not going to be super specific about the details because a lot of it is just keeping up constant DPS and just using your, short cooldown, relatively short cooldown abilities like gouge and kidney shot effectively. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of 2v2 here, just to show that you can pretty much hit any target at any time. You don't have to just tunnel vision a target. It's the same principle in Arena as always, which is you just want to hit whichever target you can that is also most vulnerable based on cooldowns and squishiness and stuff. So in this matchup, I would much rather hit the Resto Druid, because the Resto Druid in any form besides bear form, which he's going to have to eventually shift out to anyway, is going to be a much squishier target than a warrior. But he's doing a good job annoying me and kiting me, so I'm going to be forced to hit the warrior for a while until I can connect to the druid. We're playing with no comms, so we're going to have some definite CC overlaps and issues here, but things to keep in mind when you're playing. Don't be afraid to use cooldowns like evasion and vanish fairly early if needed. I almost always pop evasion very early if I'm being attacked by any melee. Typically, if I feel like I'm going to mitigate a significant enough amount of damage with evasion, or perhaps stop CC from hitting me, like leg sweep from a from a Windwalker monk, or like a rake opener from a feral or Resto Druid. If I want to prevent peels and also prevent a lot of damage on me, or more or less just discourage them from attacking me, I usually pop evasion early, because with the new talent, you reduce the cooldown very quickly. As you can see, I popped it pretty much in the opener when I first engaged the warrior, and it's already got, just over 30 seconds left here. So I highly recommend not being afraid to use it, because if you pop evasion before you use your big damage cooldowns, such as Dread Blades, Flagellation, and Adrenaline Rush, mainly when you're popping your cooldowns, you're going to be spending a lot of combo points, which means you're going to, reset the cooldown very fast. As you can see, it's already back up, and I don't even need it again yet. This generally also applies to 3v3. You reset this cooldown so much, there's no reason to not take advantage of it. As you can see here, though, we are, I'm trying to swap to the druid, because every time the druid gets close and is vulnerable, I'd rather go on the druid since he's a squishier target. Plus, kidney shotting him is a lot of CC, but us not being in comms means we're overlapping a lot. Like, he didn't know I was going on the druid, so he cycloned him after cycloning the warrior. So eventually I am able to connect to the druid. So I use Blade Dance, or Blade Rush rather. It's very handy for just as a little gap closer. It's not like it's amazing for the energy regen or the damage or anything, but it is a nice little gap closer. Between that and grapple, you have pretty decent mobility. But here, I have no more ways to connect him, and he gets out of line of sight, so I'm forced to attack the warrior again. Do not be afraid to just constantly swap targets. Even if I'm using I'm committing my kidney shot stun here on this guy. I popped evasion because I thought the druid might try to rake me, which he did, but it only works if you're facing him, so you don't really know where he's going to come from in stealth. But I'm able to connect to the druid again finally. Big pistol shot here, and he eventually goes down. But both the targets are viable, and they were both in danger the whole time. Now, gouge is very handy, and it's also a very short cooldown, so don't be afraid to use gouge flippantly. Just use it when it's to interrupt a cast, or just some off CC on a different DPS, or you can use it to CC chain the healer. If I gouge the healer into a full Hodge if I'm playing with a paladin, or gouging them into your priest sphere, or whatever. Obviously, if you're playing with a class that diminishes with gouge, like if you're playing with a hunter or a mage, trap and poly obviously diminish with gouge. It's just like sap. So you have to be wary of that. You don't want to DR stuff from your teammates. But if you're playing a comp where it's the only DR besides sap, then you can pretty much just use it whenever you want. So here I blinded the priest, but I couldn't quite connect to the rogue. I popped all my cooldowns on him with CC combo on the priest. One of them is going to have to trinket for sure. The rogue immediately recognized that he was about to get trucked with all my cooldowns, so if he didn't trinket, the priest would have to trinket. And remember, I'm playing with acrobatic strikes, so always be aware that you can do long-range gouges and long-range kicks. I focus kicked that priest. It's very easy when you have 8-yard melee range. I also already used my evasion because this is an assassination rogue, so evasion evasion doesn't do a whole lot versus a subtlety rogue, since they can just cheap shot you through it over and over. But against assassination rogues, it's obviously very useful. Now I'm just in this kidney shot, but as you can see, I just recently fainted. I couldn't reset the cooldown for that stun perfectly. But another thing is, with the talent that resets evasion, you're also resetting your feints constantly. So don't be afraid to do that. You have a huge advantage against other rogue specs just in the fact that you can reset feint and evasion much faster than they can. So it is a big defensive advantage. And then here I rolled True Bearing, which means I'm going to get to do it even more. I'm just going to keep resetting cooldowns, you know, like my evasion's already back up, and this guy's is going to be on cooldown for, you know, another minute and a half or so. So that's just a big advantage. We already got the Rogue's Trinket and the Priest Trinket. My blind is already back up because the 1.5 minute blind. I focus kick the Priest. I kidney shot the Rogue. He reps, otherwise I could have just full blinded him. Now again, I know I'm not being very specific. I'm just going through some play-by-plays just because I think it's important that you know how it's supposed to feel. A lot of people, you know, get the right ideas on paper and they stick rigidly to what they believe is the right thing. But I feel like if you just look at footage and I put the pieces together for you with words a little bit, you can get a better idea of how it's supposed to feel when you're actually in an arena playing it out. Now, I will go over a couple of basic fundamentals and list them out in a little bit though. That way you do have some extremely specific rules of thumb to follow. But here I opened on the warrior with a cheap shot and a kidney shot. Normally I don't do that. It's very rare that I do a cheap shot and a kidney shot because Outlaw Rogue is very bad at cheap shot into kidney shot. Our combo point generation is very random, you know, with the double sinister strikes, or if you have the broadside buff, it's all very RNG. So it's very rare that, unless you pop like Adrenaline Rush and Dread Blades, that you're actually going to be able to perfectly connect a cheap shot to kidney shot. But it's okay if there's a gap in between. Outlaw Rogue is a lot like Warrior. You don't actually need to kill things inside of a stun all the time. You are not like a Subtlety Rogue who is just trying to 100-0 somebody inside of a stun. You are pretty much a warrior just constantly doing DPS. You're just trucking people. I will show you some 3v3 footage where we get kills strictly by just, you know, we stun somebody and we fail to kill them inside the stun, and then I have my cooldown still running and I just do unbelievable DPS to them and just kill them without any CC after that on the kill target, and maybe even sometimes no CC on the healer. Sometimes when you have all your cooldowns, if you don't get peeled, you just do so much raw damage. I very rarely get out damaged by any class as Outlaw, even when I don't utilize Blade Flurry. Now, of course, you should always be swapping in between targets that are vulnerable. You know, if he full Iron Barks himself and NS's himself, I mean, there's no reason to not hit the warrior who's not fully hotted, right? Now here, I'd rather hit the druid when I can connect to him, even if he's in bear form, because eventually he'll have to shift out to heal, and he gets hit with a 15k big pistol shot. He uses NS on himself, and because I accidentally flagellated the warrior because he intervened it, the warrior's not topped off or fully hotted, and he doesn't have NS, and he gets hit with a 12.4k pistol shot, plus just regular damage. That's also a perfect display of how valuable Greenskin Wickers is. You know, it's just a normal part of your damage rotation, and I hit the druid with a 15k, and then I swap to the warrior, and the cooldown on Between the Eyes is short enough with cooldown resetting that I was able to hit the warrior for a 12.4k pistol shot. And they get much higher than that on squishier targets as well. So now we're going to go over some basic fundamentals and then show some 3v3, and I'll show you how these fundamentals usually are in play, but I'm not going to say it's perfect. I mean, you don't always have to follow this or anything. But firstly, openers aren't super important, you know, for whatever comp you're playing. Usually you're not trying to do like an RMP opener where you're just trying to explode somebody in the opener or force a bunch of cooldowns. Usually I'm going to do a fake opener, and here's why. Outlaw has some ramp up time. You're going to want to, you know, roll the bones before you open, and then you're going to want to generate combo points, get your slice and dice up, build up more combo points, and then get ready to kidney shot somebody and pop flagellation, dread blades, adrenaline rush, everything like that. So usually my openers aren't going to be super terrifying, but you're not in it for an instant kill in the opener like a Subtlety Rogue RMP type of style. So you're just there to beat the crap out of things over the next, you know, minute or so. So in line with that, usually I'm going to cheap shot the off target and save kidney shot for the main target. Because you need time, a little bit of ramp up time to get going, and also the benefit of this is if you do sort of a fake opener on one target, they might overuse certain abilities. For instance, a warrior might storm bolt you instantly, trying to peel you off of his shadow priest partner or something, so you don't have to worry about getting, you know, storm bolted when you do an actual go with kidney shot afterwards. So a lot of the time a fake opener and waiting a little bit to get their peels out of the way is good, because if you don't get peeled during all of your cooldowns, it is a lot of damage. So there's usually no need to rush things. You can go for saps, they're not also super crucial. Again, if you can sap and get an opener immediately, like sap and then cheap shot one target and then just save your kidney shot and try to force cooldowns just with the sap cheap shot, it is possible if you and your teammates are doing just enough damage that you might force some minor cooldowns. You know, maybe if you're playing with a Ret Paladin, he just does so much damage in the opener that you force a disperse or something, you know, just from his damage. But because of the way Outlaw is, you want to ramp up, build some combo points, slice and dice, build some combo points, start doing damage. It's perfectly fine if you want to do like a sap the healer and cheap shot, you know, a target, and it's not a full kidney shot go, but you could pop all of your cooldowns on that cheap shot if you don't anticipate that you need a stun. Certain targets, though, you really want a full stun as often as you can, like a rogue, because if you cheap shot a rogue and pop all your cooldowns and don't, you know, stun lock him, he's going to have plenty of cooldowns to protect himself, like evasion or vanish or whatever. So they're a slippery target. Same with mages. A mage can just dragon's breath you and then blink away multiple times, alter time, stuff like that. And a lot of the time you can just power through those anyway and do so much damage that it doesn't really matter, but I wouldn't rely on that all the time. So it's okay to pop all your cooldowns on a soft opener, even with just a sap into a cheap shot, but you have to make sure that it's against a class and against a comp where you might get something out of it. You don't want to pop all your cooldowns and not get defensives out of them or trinkets or anything like that. So usually I'll just do a fake cheap shot go, build up combo points, get a slice and dice, build up more combo points, and then kidney shot, pop every cooldown on the main target, coupled with a blind on the healer. Which brings me to the next part. Make sure to use blind early, typically on your first real go. Your first kidney shot go, you want to use blind on the healer if there's no other CC from your teammates anyway, because this is almost certainly going to force cooldowns from them, sometimes multiple. You're either going to force the DPS target that's kidney shotted to use defensives and or his trinket, or you're going to force the healer to trinket to save his teammate during the kidney shot. And sometimes one button is not enough. Sometimes you do so much damage that they might both have to trinket to survive, or maybe, I'm just going to use the Shadow Priest as an example, maybe the Shadow Priest has to disperse even if the healer trinketed because you're doing so much damage along with your teammate that it might not even be enough. Or that the Druid might have to trinket Ironbark NS, just to save the Shadow Priest's cooldown, stuff like that. So usually you want to couple your first kidney shot with a blind, that way you're optimizing when you pop all your cooldowns that somebody's going to have to spend some sort of cooldown. And let's say the only cooldown they trade, like Dispersion is a pretty hard counter to what you're doing, right? You blind the healer and you kidney shot the Shadow Priest, and then he just presses Disperse on high health. Well, he's totally fine with just Disperse. You're not going to kill him through that unless he uses it at like 10%. So what do you do in this case? Well, crap, now you're not going to get either of their trinkets, right? Don't worry, you popped all your cooldowns, swap to the next guy, and just start railing him. When you have Adrenaline Rush and Dreadblades going, even if the Flagellation is hitting the wrong target now, it doesn't matter. You can still pump so much damage with those cooldowns along with your DPS partner that you still might force the healer to trinket if you're fast enough. Which brings me to the next fundamental: swap fast and swap often. Outlaw is not punished by swapping targets. It's not like a subtlety rogue who uses his entire Shadow Dance and all of his damage on one target, and then his Shadow Dance ends and he can't really do a hard swap anymore, right? After that, they have to wait until they do their next CC chain and go and stuff like that. And an Assassination Rogue isn't going to have like a really hard swap power usually because, let's say he pops Vendetta on the kill target and he's doing tons of damage, but then they counter it with a bop or something like a Disperse. Well then, if the target's going to survive, you may be low on energy and you still have to load up all your dots on the other target, and you know, there's definitely some ramp up involved there on a assassination swap, so it's not quite as effective. Outlaw is definitely the best at just hard swapping constantly, because you don't really rely on cooldowns to constantly be doing DPS. You're very much like a warrior or a ret paladin, where you can constantly be trucking any target you want, but then your cooldowns are definitely going to make you a lot stronger when they're up. If you've ever seen Vanguards play, one thing I love about the way he plays is he never wastes time. Even if he can't reach his kill target, he will hit anything close to him, whether it's a hunter pet, a warlock pet, the healer, you know, the off DPS. He will hit whatever's close to him. He's always maximizing his damage, and that's how you should play. And a lot of classes are, you know, should play like that if you want to maximize. Classes like Warrior and Ret and Outlaw are so good at just constantly swapping and hitting targets, because you don't have to like apply a bunch of debuffs to those targets to just keep doing damage. The reason this is so good is because it will open up opportunities for kills that you didn't even think you would have. If you swap to a Feral Druid randomly after just training a Hunter, or the Hunter uses Roar of Sacrifice on himself, trinkets, and gets away or whatever, you might be like, okay, let's just keep training him, you know? But if you just swap to the Feral Druid right next to you, let's say your Kidney Shot comes back up off cooldown, and you have a Hunter who's just, you know you're not going to kill him right now, you know? You could just surprise swap to a Feral Druid in cat form, and you might force him to trinket, which could matter later, because you might kill him later, or maybe you stop him from off-healing later by gouging him, knowing he has no trinket when you are killing the Hunter. There's just so many opportunities that come from just randomly PvEing people that are near you. Don't be afraid to just hit whatever target that is near you. You want to always be doing damage if possible. You never just want to, you know, tunnel vision and be waddling at a target across the map and just saving everything until you reach him. Constant pressure really throws enemy teams off. They don't know how to handle it a lot of the time. The healer starts getting behind. You might even run healers out of mana just because you're doing so much damage. Okay, enough with the yappity yap yap. Let's get into some more gameplay, and I'll show these fundamentals in play. Alright, so like I said about the fake openers, the mage is our main kill target here, but I'm going to sap the paladin, and don't worry, you're not going to get a whole lot out of your saps usually, especially against a comp like this. They're very spread out, so I just cheap shot the Shadow Priest to control him a little bit, and then I get, you know, my Slice and Dice up, and then I start popping all my cooldowns on the mage. But here's the thing, I had to use my grapple and sprint already, so the mage gets away. So I swap back to the Shadow Priest with the DR Kidney because I still have Dread Blades and Adrenaline Rush and lots of damage. So I force a bop just by swapping to the Shadow Priest by myself. So you see what I'm saying? We got a bop out of the way just because instead of tunnel visioning the mage and waddling to him, I decided to just swap to the closest target. And now we force altar time and sacrifice on the mage. Now I'm back on the priest because I can't reach the mage. This is that fundamental of just taking advantage of any opportunity. Here we got the Shadow Priest trinket, and I'm hitting him pretty hard by myself. So you get a lot out of this stuff. You know, just randomly swapping. And look, we got another bop, and that's not even on our main kill target. Because I'm hitting the Shadow Priest every time I can't catch the mage, we got 2 bops out of him already. And he had to sacrifice the mage. So the paladin basically has no cooldowns left to save his teammates. And now I can go on the main target that I want to go on in a full stun. Now they can finally catch him, and we just do tons of damage here. Full kidney shot, and we're both pumping him. The paladin had to bubble to save him, barely. And, you know, now the priest doesn't have a trinket and there's no bop, so any CC that we hit on the priest from now on is gonna, you know, they can't get out of it. There's no trinket, no bop, nothing to break our physical CCs anymore. So just constantly swapping when you can't reach your main target is vital. And if you notice, I'm keeping feint up pretty much the whole game. Even though the evasion cooldown reduction doesn't do anything against wizards, I still typically take that talent against wizard cleaves, because as you can see, they're just pumping me the whole game, right? So I'm just keeping feint up constantly. Unfortunately, this kidney shot here got screwed because I got rooted just too far away, but we're able to still just pump him. Here's another altar time. He has to altar back. All we did was incap the paladin into a full blind now. No trinket, no bubble. So most likely going to get some cooldowns out. There's another ice block. Now that he's sitting in an ice block, hey, instead of saving my kidney for the mage, I'll just hit the Shadow Priest. Oh look, there's Disperse for free just by being proactive. Instead of waiting for the mage to come out of the ice block, we just swap to the next closest guy and force more cooldowns out of him. That way, even though we're going to end up killing the mage, the priest now has no dispersion, so he's a very viable target. And as you can see, because I'm keeping feint up constantly, I didn't get randomly globaled while my healer was CC'd. I survived with 20% health and was able to cloak out of that because I'm just keeping feint up constantly when I'm taking damage. You don't have to keep it up. Let's say if the mage is sitting a full kidney shot like here, you don't have to keep up feint the whole time, right? Because it's not like the Shadow Priest is just going to solo you. But it's a good practice to just keep it up as much as you can when you anticipate that you are vulnerable to just any sort of damage. And just to show that ending again, so I cheap shot the priest because I used my vanish. I kidney shot the mage. He trinkets. My monk incaps the healer. Big pistol shot crit, almost 21k. And just, this is why I love green skin. You can't do that kind of damage without green skin. Just the whole game I'm getting big pistol shot chunks and it forces cooldowns. You know, there are people that ask questions about which legendary is best to use all the time, and I'm not going to say in every situation green skin is always the best, but it's pretty hard to argue with constant damage. It takes your lowest, one of your lowest damaging abilities and makes it your highest or close to highest damaging ability. Usually in my details breakdown, pistol shot is my highest. It's either number 1 or number 2. And normally that's very low on the chart of your DPS, and it doesn't really require you to change your damage rotation whatsoever. Now here I'm going to do basically the same opener. The rogue is our desired kill target. The Shadow Priest is also viable, but I'm just going to sap the paladin and pretend I'm going on the Shadow Priest. Now here I failed to pre-feint this go, so I had to trinket, but he did smoke bomb anyway. So I did unfortunately have to use my trinket. I'm going to pop evasion early because now I'm popping my damage cooldowns, which means I'm going to be spending a lot of combo points. Now I can't stun the rogue just yet, at least not a full stun because he's on DR from the leg sweep. So I'm just sort of waiting and I'm just pumping damage. But the plan, of course, ultimately is to catch this dude in a kidney shot if he wasn't DR'd on the leg sweep. But my monk partner did get like a double leg sweep and it kind of peeled a little bit, so it's okay. I had to vanish there because I felt I was in trouble. Now I finally get a full kidney on him. I bombed him. I don't usually use smoke bomb. I do sometimes. When I'm playing like with a windwalker, our burst can be so high that I do take it sometimes. But there did force the rogue's trinket and vanish, so now he's super vulnerable. And as you can see, I feinted this kidney. It's usually obvious when they're going to kidney swap to you, but if they see you, you know, feint too early, they might just hold the kidney. So that's why it's really important. And this is another thing. When I said constantly do damage to a target, it's really important because of cooldown reductions. Here my evasion is already back up. I used evasion in the opener, and barely like, what, a minute later, I have my evasion back again. So this is why it's really important. And here I pre-feinted this kidney, at least the end of it, so I took some reduced damage. I still got kind of low. Still pretty scary, but the important thing is the reason you want to constantly be hitting any target, even if it's not your main target, it's not only because the way you deal damage, any target's really a viable target. Some are easier to kill than others, but there's nothing that's just unkillable, right? I've never felt that any target is really unkillable. So really just hit whatever you feel like. But the main reason it's so important is because you want to be able to constantly... Oh, there's a big 21k pistol shot to blow his brains out there again. I love green skin. But it's not just important to constantly hit any target when you can't reach your main target because of the amount of pressure you generate and the cooldowns that you get from people, but it's also because you want to be constantly spending combo points. You want to generate and spend combo points all the time because those reduce your cooldowns. That's going to keep your feint up way more often. That's going to reduce your evasion way more often, your vanish, etc. Not to mention your mobility buttons. So just keep pumping damage. Use green skins as often as you want. You don't have to just necessarily save it unless you have a really coordinated, like, super burst go on your main kill target. Then you might want to save it. But if you're constantly spending combo points, your between the eyes cooldown is going to be very short. And if you get lucky and roll the true bearing buff, it's going to be almost no cooldown. I mean, you can spend, you know, and it's like 6 combo points with deeper stratagem is 12 seconds off with true bearing. So the between the eyes cooldown is only 45 seconds. So if you spend, you know, 6 combo points 3 times in a row, which is really easy, that's literally 36 seconds off of a 45 second cooldown. Essentially, you know, making it a roughly 10-second cooldown by the time you do all that. So just keep hammering whatever you can, and don't be afraid to use your kidney shot on a nice hard swap. It's a short enough cooldown. Sometimes, like I said, it's worth saving for a coordinated go on the desired kill target. But honestly, you can usually force cooldowns or maybe just randomly get a kill just by kidney shotting. You know, if a mage is sitting in an ice block, you could save the kidney shot, or you could do just a kidney shot swap to something else. So here against RMP, I always like to camp the priest because my opener is not going to be as hard as an RMP's opener, right? So in this matchup, typically what I do is I wait to see when the priest starts running in. The priest usually hides so his rogue can get a sap. The priest doesn't want to get in combat because he wants his rogue to get a sap and they get a, you know, really hard double CC opener. But since I'm in stealth, what I do is I wait for the priest to clearly be charging in. That's an indicator that his team is about to open. And when the priest charge in, I sap him. That way he can't fear or, you know, mind games and assist damage on the kill target and stuff like that. And they usually have the advantage in the opener, so typically what I do is I just try to peel my team. So I did a cheap shot and a kidney shot on the mage. Usually I would like gouge the rogue or something as well to peel, possibly disarm if I'm running it. But I didn't do that here because I ended up getting chastised and feared off, and the rogue was too far away to gouge. So I just did a cheap shot and a kidney shot on the mage to slow down their opener. Now that we survived the opener and I was able to build up combo points, I kidney shotted the rogue with a full blind on the priest. Rogue gets really low, so he trinkets late because he knows that Rhett can just one-shot him at 20%. And I did vanish to sap the priest, so I figured I might as well do a DR cheap shot on the rogue, and this forces his vanish. We almost killed him in it. And the reason I did that is because if I'm going to use my vanish for a sap, normally I'm not going to put somebody on DR. But the reason I did it there is because he just came out of the kidney shot, so resetting the DR there is not a big deal. And on top of that, he had evasion up, so we couldn't hit him anymore. So cheap shotting will stun him and make him vulnerable at 20%. And we ended up forcing vanish because of it. So I got to sap the priest off of the blind and almost kill the rogue and force his vanish because of it. So it's good usage. Usually if I vanish for a sap, I'll cheap shot the off target just for cross CC. But your vanish is a relatively short cooldown, so unless you know you're going to have to use it defensively, there's nothing wrong with throwing it out early. Especially the sap off of a blind is very valuable if you get a cheap shot follow-up on something else as well. Because with true bearing or without, I mean, you're going to reset the cooldown relatively quickly, so it's generally worth doing. Now here I put a kidney shot on the priest because my Rhett still has a Hodge sometimes, so you don't always have to use a kidney shot on the kill target. Generally that's best, but using it for some clutch CC at a good time is totally worth it. Now here I did it thinking we were still going to just pump the rogue. The rogue has no evasion, his feint's on cooldown, but unfortunately he was able to get away and my Rhett couldn't reach him and he got a fleshcraft off, so it wasn't that valuable. But you don't want to feel restricted like you always have to kidney shot the kill target. Sometimes, if they don't have big defensives, I mean the rogue, at this point, you know he has no vanish or evasion. So those are the big cooldowns that will save his life from raw damage, right? So if he has no vanish and no evasion, you don't necessarily need to kill him inside of a stun anymore. And remember, gouge is a short cooldown too, so you can use it to peel, interrupt casts, or just CC the healer like this. And then he comboed it with a Hodge on the rogue at the same time as the priest got gouged. And you have to sync up stuff like this. Since I know I already used my kidney shot on the healer, I told my Rhett he can Hodge the rogue when I gouge the priest, that way he can't dispel it, and we can do a bunch of damage. Now this is the fun part. Because we desynced our stuns like that, and usually he's Hodging the healer and I'm kidney shotting the kill target, but because we got out of sync, I just am keeping the rogue low by, you know, kidney shotting the healer here as well. And this is where it's fun, because the rogue isn't topped off and he used his entire feint there. All of my cooldowns come back up, Flagellation, Dreadblades, and Adrenaline Rush, and I can literally just PvE him. Me and my Rhett just do so much unbelievable damage that because of the minor CC chains on the priest with the, you know, gouge into stuns, he's not able to keep up with it, and the rogue has no defensives left. He doesn't have enough burst healing to heal through our damage, and we just truck the rogue. Now at some point we also could have, you know, randomly swapped to the mage, but as you can see in this game, it was very rare that the mage was ever, you know, a very good target. It was rare that he was just right next to me and the rogue was away. I was able to stick to the rogue most of the time after he had no cooldowns, therefore it was worth just training him. But as you saw in other games, it's totally worth just swapping really hard to any nearby target. Now even though my team is rushing in on this map, it's a little less obvious when the priest is going to rush in when they're doing an opener, but I did see the mage come out of stealth on Gladius, out of Invis. So I ended up sapping the priest before he could get in combat, and we were just going to immediately proc cauterize, mostly my ret popping damage with wings, while the priest is just sitting a sap. And the priest is now on DR, so remember I said to throw out a blind early. Normally when you have pressure, I will throw out a blind really early, but because of the fear DR, I wasn't able to do that. But generally speaking, you want to get that blind out as early as possible, just to make sure that it comes up as soon as possible. Now, I could have just gouged off this ward here. I actually vanished, and then I saw the ward on the priest, so I cheap-shotted it off. But the beauty of gouge, it's such a short cooldown. It's such a good counter to holy ward a lot of the time. Gouge is just one of the best utilities. Here I peel the rogue's dance, I gouge him into a kidney shot, do big freaking damage, and now I finally get to full blind on the priest who already trinketed. Here I'm actually playing disarm. I find disarm is most valuable against subtlety rogues, because if you can disarm them on a shadow dance, they get pretty screwed. A disarm on a shadow dance is one of the most painful things. And they are trying to go me a lot, so I'm just trying to constantly spend combo points and reset my cooldown on feint so I can keep the feint up. So here I pre-feinted right before they did their stun go. I trinketed anyway, probably mostly because I wanted aggression, and despite the feint, my healer's in a full CC, so I trinketed anyway. But mostly I just wanted to pump. I know the game isn't going to last much longer, because we've done so much damage and gotten so many cooldowns. Nice little 20k pistol shot, blew that mage's brains out. But anyway, that is it for this guide. It ended up being quite a bit longer than I really expected it to be, but I also wanted to make sure it was fairly thorough. So it's pretty hard to just, break it down to these blatant fundamentals that you can just strictly follow. There is no just set script that you're going to follow that you'll achieve victory on, but the main thing is Outlaw is a very versatile toolkit, and there's so much you can do with gouge and relatively short cooldown stun with a 7-second kidney shot and a shorter cooldown blind at 30-yard range, and reduced cooldowns for defensives and stuff. And here's just a bunch of screenshots of my details, reinforcing why I like greenskin wickers so much. Here's just various screenshots of my damage breakdowns from one night of Arena. This is just one evening of Arena, and you can see pistol shot is usually number 1, number 2, or number 3. And usually it's neck and neck even if it's 2 or 3. It's not usually by a large margin. And it's very often first place. So I like greenskin wickers because it just doesn't change much about your playstyle at all. You don't really have to consider it that much. It just turns one of your lowest damaging abilities into one of your biggest pumpers. And it's so fun to get 20 to 21k. I've even gotten 22k pistol shots in Arena occasionally. So it's very fun, and I highly recommend it. Anyway, sorry this guide ended up being so long. Hopefully some of you don't mind that. I will do follow-up guides that are shorter about very specific things. Like strictly, I'm going to show the Outlaw Burst setup in a video standalone, so that should be a much shorter video, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching as always, and peace out.